Welcome to the Advanced Lab and this first video, which is the introduction to Proxmox. I want to issue a strong word of caution. Do not install Proxmox on your host computer or a computer that you want to continue to use. Proxmox will overwrite everything. This is a Type 1 hypervisor, which means it runs on the bare metal or on the system. So it is like an operating system. So if you install Proxmox on a Windows system, you will no longer be able to use Windows. You will have installed Proxmox over top of Windows. So that's why this is an advanced lab. Only do this lab if you have an extra server or an extra computer laying around that you want to use for this project. This is a great project, but do not overwrite your current computer. So you may be asking yourself, what is the difference between the intermediate lab and the advanced lab? Well, the first obvious thing is the introduction of a new technology, which is the Type 1 hypervisor. And just as I talked about in the warning, that basically is installed on what's called the bare metal. So it's installed on that machine. It will overwrite any operating system or any data that you happen to have on that machine. So that's the first difference. And the second difference is we're going to introduce a third LAN or local area network, and this one will be called AllSafe. So in the intermediate lab, we had two LANs. We had the attack LAN and the eCore LAN. So basically what we're going to put in the AllSafe LAN is your SIM, Velociraptor, and other technologies that a managed security service provider generally provides. So that basically AllSafe is that MSSP, and it is providing that service to eCore. So all the monitoring and stuff is being done in AllSafe LAN. The events are taking place in the eCore LAN, and of course, the attack LAN is where the attacks are coming from. Now remember, this is an advanced lab, so you're not limited to just those technologies in the AllSafe LAN. If you want to use a different SIM, for example, you want to use Splunk or you want to use Elastic, one of the other SIMs that we've used in this course, then just build that inside the AllSafe LAN instead of Waza, which is the one that we're going to go with. Get creative and don't feel you have to follow the step-by-step instructions. In fact, at this point, if you're doing the advanced lab, you really should not need step-by-step instructions, but I will provide those just to get you up and going. But go ahead and test things, break it, fix it, figure out what went wrong, and go from there. That is the whole beauty of having this advanced lab setup, is provide you a platform where you can try new things. So Proxmox is an open source virtualization platform that combines two virtualization technologies. The first one is called KVM, which stands for kernel-based virtual machine, and then LXC, which is Linux containers. So this makes Proxmox a Type 1 hypervisor, also known as a bare metal hypervisor, as it runs directly on the host hardware to control the hardware and to manage the guest operating systems. So as opposed to VirtualBox, which runs on your host system, whether it's Windows or Mac or Linux, Proxmox runs on the metal. So Proxmox is like the hypervisor, is like the operating system on that system. So basically, VirtualBox and Proxmox are both virtualization platforms, but they serve different purposes and have different features. So some of the key differences between VirtualBox and Proxmox include, VirtualBox is a Type 2 hypervisor, meaning it runs on top of an existing operating system like a regular application, where Proxmox, on the other hand, is a Type 1 hypervisor, also known as a bare metal hypervisor, which runs directly on the host hardware without the need for a separate operating system. VirtualBox is designed for desktop virtualization, is well suited for running a few virtual machines on a single desktop or laptop. However, Proxmox is designed for server virtualization and is intended for managing and running multiple virtual machines and containers on a server. VirtualBox has a GUI interface that allows users to manage the virtual machines locally. while Proxmox, on the other hand, is managed through a web-based interface that can be accessed from any web browser, making it easier to manage virtual machines and containers across multiple servers. Proxmox offers advanced features such as live migration, high availability clustering, and backup and restore functionality, which are essential for managing virtualized environments in a data center, while VirtualBox is powerful for desktop virtualization, it lacks some of these like enterprise level features. Proxmox is backed by a commercial company, Proxmox Server Solutions, which offers professional support and services for users. While VirtualBox, developed by Oracle, also offers some support options, but it may not be as comprehensive as Proxmox's support offerings. So in summary, while VirtualBox is suited for desktop virtualization and smaller scale virtualization needs, Proxmox is more suitable for server virtualization and larger scale virtualization deployments. Now, for our training program, VirtualBox will be fine. However, you just won't be able to run as many VMs simultaneously as you can with Proxmox. And if you have an extra machine and you feel adventurous, consider installing Proxmox. And basically, when it comes to equipment, use what you have. I mean, you could repurpose an old computer. Maybe you could add some more memory to it, but you don't need an exceptionally powerful machine. So like I said, even if you don't use an older system for your build, you may be able to use the memory and SSDs from an old system and upgrade a relatively cheap or repurposed system. A lot of students have had success in purchasing refurbished servers. Also, if your system does not have the resources to simultaneously run multiple VMs on different VLANs, only turn on the VMs that you need when you're using at that specific moment. For example, if you're creating events to practice using your SIM, you do not need to have all like your forensic workstation or your malware analysis VM running at the same time. That will just help you prioritize if you're running on limited resources. Okay, so to download the latest version, go to proxmox.com and then look under Proxmox Virtual Environment, and we see the newest version is version 9.1. Now, this is being recorded in early February of 2026. So we'll go ahead and select Learn More. And it gives us a little bit more information about the Proxmox virtual environment, also shortened later in some documentation is just PVE. So we're going to go ahead and select Download. If you want to learn more, then feel free to go ahead and explore this page. But Download is the next thing we want to select. We've selected it. And now we go down to the latest release. What we want is the ISO installer for Proxmox VE 9.1. So we just select download and it's starting to download. If we look, we can see that it's 1.7 gigabytes. It may take a little bit of time depending on your internet connection to download that ISO. It seems to be working pretty quick right now on mine. Okay, so we've completed that download. So now what we want to install is a piece of software called Rufus. And what we use Rufus for, if you don't already have it installed, is it will create a bootable USB drive for us. So basically what we'll do is take the ISO that we just downloaded for Proxmox. We'll use Rufus to create a bootable USB, and then we will install Proxmox through the USB on our hardware that we're installing the Proxmox server. So once you have downloaded the appropriate version for Rufus, I just went with the standard Windows 64, and then you can just open it up. You may be prompted to unblock the unverified file, but go ahead and do that. And once it's open, insert, if you haven't already, insert the USB that you intend to make your bootable USB. In my case, it's just this generic 32 gigabyte USB. and then you select the ISO that you want to boot to. Navigate to where your Proxmox ISO is, select open, select OK, and everything else should be good. So go ahead and select start. Now just a word of caution that you'll see the pop-up will come up and remind you that if you have anything on that USB stick, it will be overwritten when the Proxmox ISO is written to it. As you see, I had some stuff on that disk, so it's deleting some partitions. So this may take a few minutes to create the bootable USB. As you see, there is a progress bar, and I'll go ahead and pause it while it continues to write. Okay, so now the disk is completed. We can go ahead and close this and take the disk out of our host machine and be prepared to now move over to our system that we will be installing Proxmox on. On your machine that you'll be installing Proxmox on, it is highly recommended that you connect to your home router through a wired connection. Proxmox does not play well with wireless connections. So once you have booted to the Proxmox installer, and based on the system that you use, you insert the USB drive, and then as you restart that system, you'll hit either escape or F10 or F8 and choose your boot device, which you would choose the USB that we installed the Proxmox ISO to. So once it gets there, you'll be presented with this screen, and you can go ahead and select the Install Proxmox, the graphical interface. The next screen that'll come up will be the end user license agreement. So go ahead and select Agree. You can then select the disk that you want to install Proxmox on, and then select your location and time zone. The next screen will prompt you to create a password and to confirm it, and then select an email address. You will have to change that default email address. The next screen provides the network information as far as the IP address, the gateway, and the DNS server, and this should be automatically selected for you if you have DHCP on your home router. And you could also give it a fully qualified domain name for the host name. Your IP addresses will almost certainly be different. The next screen allows you to confirm your settings before you select install. And if everything looks correct, then go ahead and select install. So there will be a progress bar at the bottom that will let you know the progress it's making during the installation. And this may take a few minutes to actually install. So once it is complete, you get to the login, and it also gives you the IP address and the port number that you can now access the web interface to complete the rest of the installation. Once you're connected with your browser at the IP address it gave you and port number 8006, you will then be prompted to log in. The username is root, and the password is whatever you set it to during the installation process. Once you get logged in, you're always going to be presented with this pop-up unless if you pay for a subscription, but everything's fully functional without paying for the subscription. So you can just select OK to get rid of that box, but you will see this box every time you restart the service. So that completes the installation. In the next video, we'll pick up from here and we'll upload some ISOs and start building VMs.